Okay, so let's talk a little bit about subtraction of decimals, and we'll also get into some of the addition aspects. Because with this, the important thing is we look here, just like any addition and subtraction work, we have to line up place values, okay? So each of the place values needs to be correctly lined up. And so when we do that, with addition or subtraction, we want to look at this and line up the decimal, okay? That's the shorthand version, because when I line up the decimal, all the place values fall into place, okay? So I line this up, some people do decimals first, right? And so here's my subtraction problem, and my end decimal will be straight down, okay? By doing that, all of my place values line up. So I've got my ones, my tenths, and my hundredths, okay? Ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, okay? So when these don't have the same amount of place values in them, what do we do then, right? So this is missing a thousands place value. Well, if we remember about zeros, I can add on 0 thousandth, and it doesn't change the value, okay? So putting in a 0 in there makes the difference. Now, right, adding and subtracting, I just go with their place value all the way through and down, okay? Here with decimals, I want to take the time to talk about regrouping, carrying and borrowing, right? Those are all types of regrouping. As I look at these, some of them I can subtract right away, some of them I can't, okay? And so, especially like in one of your quizzes, I want you to handwrite out a problem and show me all the carrying and borrowing. That's what I want to see in the quiz, okay? Here, same kind of thing. We need to make sure that we show all of it. As a teacher, you're going to do way more notes on the board than you ever did as a student, because you have to make sure it's sufficient for every single kid, that when they go home, their notes are enough to reteach them, okay? So, starting here, we start on the far right side and we work to the bigger units, okay? We start with that smallest unit in case we need to borrow in this case, or carry if we were doing addition, okay? So here where I had nothing, I put the 0, and that's an important placeholder, but I'm going to now use my 0 and say, can I do 0 minus 5? No, okay? With more complex, bigger numbers like this, I can't break it off and write a -5 down here and have different signs in my answer. It all has to be the same sign, okay? And so we use those other integer rules to help us out to determine that. Then we still have to subtract all these different place values. So 0 minus 5 can't do that. This is where I'm going to borrow, because I have that ability, okay? Borrowing in this, in our base 10 setup, works out like we've always done it, okay? I take this one down 1 and I carry 10 over here, okay? And it's actually a 10 that's being borrowed. That 10 now is minusing the 5 to get my 5 down here. 2 minus 2, oh, that one works out great. 6 minus 4 is 2, and 2 minus 1 is 1, okay? So I need to make sure that all of the parts and pieces of each of these, whoops, that should be at 0. I don't know what I was thinking, okay, are actually lined up, that I'm borrowing correctly, even borrowing over zeros, okay? And that's one of the tricky things. So if I had like 4.002 minus 1.998, okay? Having these in there, 2 minus 8, can't do it, right? So I go to borrow next door. Nobody's home, so I can't borrow from a 0 without borrowing and borrowing. So I'm going to cross out the next biggest unit that I have something of. Then this one would have gotten it, but I have to borrow from there, have to borrow from there, And that's when I actually get just the 1, or 10 really, borrowed. 12 minus 8 is 4, 9 is 0, 9 is 0, 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay? So making sure that even the borrowing over the zeros makes sense. Now, a couple of issues that come up. Because you've done something like this, sometimes students start borrowing from the biggest unit. There are actually books out there that teach that, and then you have leftover that you have to carry over and over again. Borrowing as necessary is the simplest way for students to learn and being able to work with this. But beware if your book or students have seen that and say, oh, I borrow from here and I carry back over, so they'll have way too much at the end and then have to shuffle it. They're really kind of doing the problem twice instead of doing once at minimum of what they need to be successful with